The social sciences were for all those who had not yet decided what to do with their lives, and for all those whose premature frustrations led them into the sterile alleys of confrontation. In China, the rules of the market are not always that transparent, so it's very hard. Also, the national TV networks are all owned by the government, so our shows are subject to censorship by the networks. Every now and then, we are told that certain subjects cannot be talked about. There are frustrations. The frustrations and joys of parenthood are just hard to understand until you have a kid. The constant fight you're having with yourself, like loving being with your kid but also being kind of bored and wanting to look at your iPhone, it's kind of an interesting thing that's hard to write about before you've experienced it. Veterans are driven by the same frustrations that the public has with what is happening in Washington, the fiscal irresponsibility and the financial crisis that our country is facing. The difference between a child's aspiration and that family's situation is the exact measurement of that family's frustrations. I've had more misrepresentations than I can handle, and people have told the wickedest lies about me. A lot of them have taken their frustrations out on me, and I don't like that because it can wound, not necessarily me, but those around me. Journalists can be so bad. Let us forget the frustrations of the past and think of our unfulfilled potential. One of the frustrations of prison life, which is also one of its intended consequences, is that the prisoner is made ineffective. He is unable to be of much use. The aim is to render him powerless. Successful stress management heavily revolves around combating the building blocks of psychological stress, a feeling as if you have no control over the adversities in your life, a feeling that you have no predictive information about the stressors, if you lack outlets for the frustrations caused by the stressors, if you have no social support. One of the frustrations of the Republicans is that they have been mostly unsuccessful in equating the word Clinton with mafia, which, to them, seems so head-smackingly obvious. I needed my own territory, and I didn't know how I was going to get it, and so I took my frustrations and plugged them into someone entirely different from me. I wanted to see if I could slip into someone else's skin. I always had this feeling, what I wanted to do. I was trying to work out myself, my frustrations, my body. I couldn't really pinpoint. I started taking photos of my sister and her friends. I was 15, exploring what it meant to be a 15-year-old girl. Do not try to live your children's lives out of your own frustrations. Anyone close to me will be familiar with my frustrations with certain aspects of social media, the behavior it encourages and attitudes towards the self it can breed. The contrasting focus on connection versus hierarchy also sheds light on innumerable adult conversations and frustrations. Say a woman tells another about a personal problem and hears in response, "I know how you feel," or "the same thing happens to me." The resulting troubles talk reinforces the connection between them. If you're not scoring, the frustrations build up. As a screenwriter, you always have frustrations. It's just the nature of the job, and you have to live with it. Your vision is not going to be the same as the director's vision. It doesn't mean one is better or worse, it means they're different. In the absence of specific solutions or evidence that we have people in Washington, D.C., who can make a significant difference, people will cling to those who at least speak to their frustrations. But clearly at the same time you've got to get out there and connect with voters and actually respond to the needs, the frustrations, whatever problems they're now saying are not being adequately solved. I suppose where I am sort of reflects the work I have chosen to do. Are there occasional frustrations because I can't work with a certain director because it's a big studio movie, and I don't have enough of a studio profile? The answer is yes. But generally, I have the career I have chosen myself. I've always wanted to write a book relating my experiences growing up as a deaf child in Chicago. Contrary to what people might think, it wasn't all about hearing aids and speech classes or frustrations. Revision has its own peculiar pleasures and its own peculiar frustrations. The ground rules are already established, the characters already exist. You don't have to bring the characters to life, but you do have to make them more convincing. The Miguel Sajuco character is not me. I wanted him to represent my own fears and frustrations and guilt, my own worst tendencies and my optimistic expectations. He's a cautionary tale for me. But he's also an examination of the darkest things that haunt me as a person. The concept of reason itself appears as an artificial attempt to separate intellectual powers from the frustrations, emotions, and accidents which cause events. The concept of reason is viewed as facade to prevent change. I have my own worries and concerns and frustrations, but I'm doing something I love to do. My wife and kids are in good shape. What is there not to be happy about? I realized that postcards was like input, and ghostwriting was output. I had all these frustrations and feelings before I did those 2 projects. Postcards was something that brought new life and creative inspiration into the record, while ghostwriting was relieving myself. At times I have long conversations with God. Sometimes I ask questions. I admit that there are also times when I let out my frustrations, fears, and anxieties in less than honorable ways. No matter what I pray about or how I pray about it, the result I always get is comfort. Exercise, prayer, and meditation are examples of calming rituals. They have been shown to induce a happier mood and provide a positive pathway through life's daily frustrations. Those are the frustrations in this industry, the boxes and the labels, where they say, you are this one thing and this is the only thing that makes you unique or viable, so just be trans. And here's a stamp on your forehead and all your characters will be wearing a fake mustache and saying, Dad, I want to wear pantyhose. When there are legitimate concerns and frustrations, it is never cool to marginalize and ridicule the people who have those concerns. Find your passion is in life, and do what you can to integrate that into your work life. That's not to say you won't have occasional frustrations in your job, that just goes with the territory, but at least you'll feel better inside, and that, over time, will mean more to you than you might think. I've always loved scuba diving and the cell-tickling feel of being underwater, though it poses unique frustrations. Alone, but with others, you may share the same sights and feelings, but you can't communicate well. Any customer of government, whether it's with education, taxes, housing, or health care, understands the frustrations when they have a bad experience. They're stuck and can't go anywhere else. Frustrations are going to be there in every profession you're in. History is a sly boots, and for a generation of blacks that cannot identify with the frustrations of Jim Crow, and for whites who cannot understand the hard deal that faces working-class blacks, it is difficult to reconcile Hughes's reputation as a poet hero with his topical verse and uncomplicated prose. No matter how many frustrations come along, or how many problems arise, I never lose the feeling of how lucky I am. I'm so pleased to be doing a job that makes me laugh every day. I'm aware that it's a huge privilege. Writing is one of the few professions in which you can psychoanalyze yourself, get rid of hostilities and frustrations in public, and get paid for it. It is criminal to put our servicemen and women in harm's way and to put the lives of so many civilians on the line for the misguided frustrations of the Bush administration. While some of the critics are voicing legitimate concerns about the merits of a system of academic benchmarks, Common Core is frequently a straw man for the frustrations conservatives have with the federal government. I genuinely enjoy sweating out my frustrations and living a healthier life. My workouts are not all about vanity. They are about clarity for my mind and soul. Thank God I have 4 sons. The mother-slash-daughter relationship is one of mankind's great mysteries, and for womankind, it can be hellaciously complicated. My mother and I are quintessential examples of the rewards and frustrations, and the joys and infuriations it can yield. I adore doing classic adaptations, but I also feel their frustrations and their limitations. Poverty is the absence of all human rights. The frustrations, hostility and anger generated by abject poverty cannot sustain peace in any society. My mother taught us all to bake. It literally calmed us down, and she was able to get rid of all her frustrations. I think rap in the street when they have rap competitions is thrilling because these kids are making it up and having a go at each other. They've got something to say. This is about getting their frustrations out. ZipRecruiter's data-driven approach to matching the right employer with the most qualified job seeker helps reduce the time, resources and frustrations expended during the hiring process. And the company is well positioned to extend its offerings to serve both employers and job seekers. Life is rife with frustrations, jealousies and, on occasion, an overwhelming sense of its injustices, but it's a big mistake to let such negative sentiments rule our lives and dictate choices. Choosing to mother your kids full-time may seem to some the easy choice, eschewing as it does the stresses and strains of the workplace. But one of the continuing frustrations for women is the lack of respect they get for taking on the responsibility for domestic life, whether they're also working outside the home or not. What makes an officer's job all the more difficult, dangerous, and demanding is that it rests on upholding that sacred trust with citizens that he or she serves. Nevertheless, I ask every officer in Chicago, reflect on your work, your training, your experience and, to be honest, about the fears and frustrations you bring to that job. Growing up, my sisters and I would always talk stories. One of my frustrations was I didn't know anything about cameras. I didn't know how to make a film and I obviously didn't have a special effects budget. I was a kid, so I was learning to draw to get down the stuff that was in my head, that I couldn't afford to actually do. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.